Well, hello Dragons, and welcome to this instructional video for Lesson 9, Part 2, Business Cycles. The main idea behind this economics lesson is business cycles are fluctuations in economic activity that occur in a market system as measured by increases or decreases in real GDP. With that in mind, by the end of watching this video, you'll be able to examine the 4 phases of the business cycle and identify the 3 leading indicators used to determine the current phase of the business cycle and predict where the economy is headed. Now that the outcomes for this lesson have been shared with you, let's get started. Business cycles are fluctuations or changes in a market system's economic activity. These fluctuations are measured by increases or decreases in real GDP. While fluctuations are inevitable, the duration of upturns or downturns varies and can last from a few months to several years. The business cycle is divided into 4 stages or phases: expansion or recovery, peak, contraction or recession, and trough. The expansion phase is a period of economic expansion and growth. For example, between 1940 and 1944, current GNP in the United States increased from $99.7 billion to $210.1 billion, indicating a period of economic expansion. This tremendous growth was mainly because of high levels of military spending during World War II. Periods of expansion eventually hit a peak, or the high point at which the economy is at its strongest and most prosperous. At a peak, high consumer demand encourages producers to use plant capacity more fully and to hire workers. When real GDP stops increasing, the business cycle enters a period of business slowdown, known as a contraction or a recession. Technically, a recession is a decline in real GDP for 2 or more consecutive quarters, that is, for 6 months or more. Depressions are prolonged in severe recessions, such as the Great Depression of the 1930s, the most severe contraction in U.S. economic history. The final stage in the business cycle is the trough, which occurs when demand, production, and employment reach their lowest levels. Following the trough, the economy enters a period of recovery, and the expansion phase begins once again. The factors that affect supply and demand also cause the fluctuations in the business cycle. Many economists agree that the level of business investment, availability of money and credit, expectations about future economic activity, and external factors affect the business cycle. Businesses invest in capital goods, such as new machinery, to increase their production. High levels of business investment promote expansion in the business cycle, while low levels of investment contribute to contractions. Business investment is important to expansion for 3 reasons. First, by purchasing new capital goods, businesses create a demand for these goods. This demand encourages further increase in production. Second, businesses use the new capital to moderate production methods and promote efficiency. Third, increased business investment, particularly in the research and development or R&D of new capital goods, tends to result technological change and generally results in higher output at lower production costs. The availability of money and credit also affects the business cycle. The amount of money in circulation depends mainly on government policies. Individuals and businesses generally borrow more money to make purchases when interest rates are low. When interest rates are high, borrowing tends to fall. Thus, Total output changes as the availability and affordability of credit rise and fall. Expectations about future economic conditions can shape current economic behavior as well. For example, if consumers believe that the economy is headed toward a recession, they may decide to limit their spending in order to save money for the hard times ahead. When consumers believe that the economy is strong and the future looks prosperous, however, they tend to increase spending. Expectations also contribute to fluctuations in the business cycle. The possibility of prosperity encourages business owners to invest in new capital or to hire more workers. Conversely, a negative view of future business prospects causes firms to decrease investment and hiring. Changes in the world economic or political climate also affects the business cycle in the United States. For example, the sharp increase in world oil prices in 1973 and 1974, and again in 1979 and 1980, contributed to the recessions in 1974 and 1975, as well as those in 1980 and 1982. The Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries, or OPEC, quadrupled oil prices beginning in late 1973, causing severe price shocks throughout the U.S. economy. This external factor kept oil prices high and eventually led to an energy crisis in the United States. Conversely, the dramatic decline in oil prices in the mid-1980s strengthened the expansion phase of the business cycle. War is another external factor that affects the business cycle. Large government expenditures for national defense traditionally have strengthened business activity in the United States. For example, periods of expansion accompanied U.S. involvement in World War I, World War II, and both the Korean and the Vietnam Wars. Economists try to predict fluctuations in the business cycle. Decision makers in business use these predictions of future economic activity to help plan for plant construction, expansion, or modernization, production goals, and hiring. Similarly, government decision makers rely on economic forecasts when they develop taxation and spending policies. Economists often rely on these three types of economic indicators to determine which phase of the business cycle the economy is currently in and in which direction it is heading. The three types of economic indicators are leading indicators, coincident indicators, and lagging indicators. All three types are sets of statistics collected by the U.S. Department of Commerce. When attempting to predict changes, economists often examine leading indicators, which anticipate the direction in which the economy is headed. Among the most important leading indicators are changes in the number of building permits issued, the number of orders for new capital and consumer goods, the price of raw materials, and stock prices. Some indicators provide information about the current status of the economy. These coincident indicators change as the economy moves from one phase of the business cycle to another and tells economists that an upturn or a downturn in the economy has arrived. The most important coincident indicators include personal income, sales volume, and industrial production levels. Not all changes take place instantly. Lagging indicators change months after an upturn or a downturn in the economy has begun and help economists predict the duration of economic upturns or downturns. Important lagging indicators include the use of consumer installment credit and the number and size of business incomes. So that's the way it is with Lesson 9, Part 2, Business Cycles. At this point, you should know that the business cycle is divided into 4 phases: expansion, peak, contraction, and trough, the level of business investment, the availability of money and credit, expectations about future economic activity, and other external factors have an impact on the business cycle, and economists analyze leading, coincident, and lagging indicators to determine the occurrence or duration of a particular phase of the business cycle. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel to have the entire catalog of economics videos available at your fingertips. Click the subscribe button and then click the follow bell to receive notifications as to when the channel is updated. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in class, Dragons!